Hello students, in this semester we are going to study the course Basics of Biomedical Instrumentation. The course code is OMD 551. So it is an open elective paper for 5th semester Electronics and Communication Engineering students. There are two types of electives. One is called as professional core elective and the other elective is called as open elective. So why it is called as open elective? This paper is common for all circuit branch students. That is, this paper will be studied by ECE students, EEE, CSE and medical electronics students. So why this is common for circuit branch? It is common because the concepts which are involved are commonly implemented by knowledge in electronics, electrical, computer science as well as mechanical. So we need knowledge of all these domains to implement something in biomedical instrumentation. So that is why it is kept as open elective. So why electronics and communication engineering students need to study a biomedical paper? Many of you can think that it is related with medicine. Why engineers has to study? So if you discuss about today's scenario, everybody is talking about something called as COVID-19 disease. And in the early stage, India was really afraid because people and government thought that we don't have sufficient instruments for diagnosis and treatment. Even if you have medicine, we don't have that much amount of equipments for treatment at the earlier stage. Later on, many companies started producing the equipments. So what are all the equipments? Equipments which are required for identifying the disease. Then equipments needed for treating the patients. So all these are required, and in all these equipments electronics were used. So the knowledge of electronics engineers are very much essential in the field of medicine or in biomedical electronics. So it is an important paper and we need knowledge of computer science students also, because all the electronics chips are programmed. So programming is also essential. So a knowledge of electronics, electrical and computer science is essential for biomedical instrumentation domain. Before starting the paper, I want to congratulate all of you and wish you all the best for this third year, because in the second year all of you might have learned some basic fundamental courses like digital electronics, electronic circuits and electromagnetic fields. In the third year you will be learning about little bit advanced papers like digital signal processing, microprocessors, VLSI design, which are all the important core subjects in electronics and communication. So why these are called as core papers means all these concepts are used in our daily day-to-day routine life. If you take our mobile phones or televisions, they are all governed by something called as digital signal processing. Whatever may be the signal, voice signal or video signal, first they will be processed, then only you can use it. So digital signal processing is very essential for today's domain. Next is microprocessors. In all your gadgets which you use today, example mobile phone, TVs, or whatever equipments you use in your house, they contain something called as a processor. It may be a microprocessor or microcontroller. So it is something like heart of the equipment. Whatever you want to do in that system, it has to be fed only through the microprocessor or microcontroller. Even automobiles are controlled by microprocessors or controllers only. So you will be learning about it. Then VLSI. Every equipment will be having a small IC inside it. What is an IC? Integrated circuit. An integrated circuit is a device which contains all active and passive elements on a single platform. So active elements are transistors, diodes, MOSFETs, etc. Passive devices, resistors, capacitors, inductors. So all these active and passive devices are embedded in a single piece of silicon. So in this third year, you will be learning about all these papers. So they are all very essential for getting job in the society or in the companies. So kindly learn well, understand the concept and get a good job, because next year you are going to face the interview. Next, I would like to start this class with a small quote. It is not a quote. So whatever comes to my understanding, I have written it here. So a good student is liked by all teachers or loved by everyone in this world. So who is a student? A student is a person who studies with interest, treats everyone with a smile, understands all the concepts, does his daily homework, eager to know new things, never misbehaves with others, talks little in the class. So all these are essential characters of a student. And who is a good student? So a student who greets everyone with a smile, a student who is obedient, a student who is on time for college, and a student who dresses neatly well is called as a good student. So don't misunderstand this quote. So a student has to study with interest. Somebody should not force you, and always you have to be friendly with others. So always you must have a smiling face, then understands everything. So you should not leave anything as pity. Even small points will have a bigger value, so you have to understand everything. When you do a project, if you leave something as invaluable, sometimes it may turn into a valuable thing. At that time, if you recognize it, sometimes it won't commit to you. So you have to understand all the details, then only you can understand the society well. So you have to do your daily homework. Homework means not like writing. So whenever we teach anything daily, at least for 5 minutes, you have to go through it. Nowadays, you have got new technologies available. Example, if we teach something, there are a lot of websites which contains all the details. So you can learn it from those websites. You can download the videos, just to go it for 5 minutes. You will understand everything, and you must have the interest to know new things. So whatever we are teaching in the class, they are all almost 50 years or discovered before 50 years. But in the real world or in the real world scenario, technology has advanced that you cannot imagine. Companies are working for the products which they are going to release after 4 or 5 years. Immediately, a product cannot be launched in the market. It requires well defined planning, processing, prototype development, testing, then only it will go for mass production. Then they will give advertisement. Then they will launch in the market. So it will take at least minimum 6 months time to launch a new product. So the world is or the company is working for the future use. So we must to have that eagerness to know new things and adapt us in our lives. Then never misbehave with others. You may be childish and friendly, but you should not hurt others. You should not hurt others' feelings. Always we have to respect others. Then talk little in the class. It is not like that you should not talk. You should not talk about unwanted things. You can talk about friendship, family, films, etc. But you should not talk something which is never useful to us. It should not waste our time. So all these things are characters of a good student. Only if you have these characters, you can survive in the society. So all the best for this wonderful year. Now we will come to our course, Biomedical Instrumentation. So before discussing about biomedical instrumentation, we will have a brief introduction about biomedical engineering. So what is biomedical engineering? So you might have heard about electronics and communication engineering, electric and electronics engineering, mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering. So what is this biomedical engineering? So it is a branch of engineering which deals with design and development of medical instruments used for identifying the diseases, that is diagnosis, treatment of patients for therapeutic use, and for developing new medicines, that is research laboratories. So it is used for design and development of instruments used in the medical field so that people will be enjoying the benefit. So if you see, biomedical engineering is the application of engineering principles and design concepts to medicine and biology. The medical engineering provides electrical, electronic, optical and computer engineering support to clinical and biomedical applications. So what is the use of biomedical engineering? So it is mainly used for healthcare diagnosis, that is identification of diseases, monitoring of patients' health, and for therapeutic use. So treatment of diseases in patients. So it is the main aim of this biomedical engineering. So what are the different terminologies used? So instead of biomedical engineering, this domain or branch can also be called as biomedical engineering, bioengineering, biotechnology, clinical engineering, medical technology, healthcare technology, medical electronics. So these are the different terminologies that are used for biomedical engineering. So you should not confuse. All these are more or less same. Now who is an electronics and communication engineer? So an engineer who involves himself in design and development of gadgets. Example, mobile phones, television, etc. Similarly, who is a medical engineer? Okay, who is a medical engineer? So we might have heard about doctors. So doctors are persons who involve themselves in diagnosing patients. That is, the persons who identify the disease and treats the disease in patients. So who is a medical engineer? So a medical engineer is a person uses the concepts of engineering and technology for the development of medical instrumentations for diagnostic and therapeutic purposes. He will be involving himself in design and development of artificial organs like artificial limbs, artificial legs, artificial hearts, and different types of devices which are needed for healthcare domain and the instruments which are required for hospitals. So who is a clinical engineer? So an engineer uses the concept of engineering, management and technology to improve the healthcare in hospitals. He will try to maintain better patient care at minimum cost through the application of technology. So he will try to identify new devices and instruments at a minimal cost for the benefit of patients and society. So such engineers are called as clinical engineers. Bioengineers. So they use advanced concepts to create knowledge from molecular to the organ system levels. Bioengineers develop innovative biologics, materials, processes, implants, devices, and informatic approaches for prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of diseases in the society. The main aim is to provide diagnosis, treatment for the patients or to the society at a minimal cost. They involve themselves in identification of new instruments and maintenance of instruments. They also provide artificial organs to the patients at a minimal cost. So biomedical engineering. So it is a growing and expanding interdisciplinary profession concerned with the application of engineering, mathematics, computing, and scientific methodologies to the analysis of biological and physiological problems to produce technological advances in healthcare. So, who is a biomedical engineer? So, what are all the concepts he will use in developing new technologies and instruments? So, a biomedical engineer apply different engineering principles like electrical and electronics engineering, mechanical engineering, physical, chemical, optical, etc. So, why he has to apply all fields of engineering in his design and development? Because if you take today's biomedical instruments, example electronic instruments like an ECG machine, a CT scan machine, an MRI machine. So what are all the concepts involved? So if you take an MRI machine or a CT scan or an X-ray machine, the inputs are purely electrical. So it involves electrical and electronics engineers. So it will make use of amplifiers, instrumentation amplifiers, etc. Then if you take a CT machine or MRI scan machine, the design and development of the structure is important. So what should be the size? What type of materials has to be used? For example, if you take artificial limbs, what must be the material which is of lightweight? So all these comes under mechanical engineering. Then physics, imaging and therapeutic devices. So what are the different types of materials that can be used? Not all materials can be used in medicine. Some materials will be harmful to the patients. So we have to identify the materials with atomic structure such that they don't do any harm for the humans. Then chemical engineering. So used for biosensors and chemical analysis, involves chemistry, optical field, optoelectronics field, computer science, used for signal processing, used for maintenance, used for recording. So all these domains or engineering concepts will be used by a biomedical engineer for the design and development of medical instruments. So the aim of a biomedical engineer is design and manufacture products that can monitor physiological functions or display anatomic details of human body. The other objective is detection and measurement of monitoring of physiological signals using biosensors, bioinstrumentation and imaging tech. So what are all the instruments that are manufactured by biomedical engineer? So classification of biomedical equipments. So there are four classification of instruments used in medical field: diagnostic equipments, therapeutic equipments, clinical equipments and laboratory equipments. So these are the four major classes. So what are diagnostic devices? The devices which are used for identification of diseases or for monitoring. So recording and monitoring devices like ECG. Okay. So it is used to capture signals from the heart. Now where it is displayed? It is displayed in a screen. So it requires a monitoring device. Okay. Measurement analysis device. Blood pressure measurement. So it is having different types of indicators. We have analog blood pressure measurements, digital blood pressure measurements. So different types of devices are there for output. Then imaging devices, CT scan, MRI scan, ultrasound scan. So these are used for diagnostic purposes. That is, what type of diseases are present inside our body. Okay, used for monitoring the signals. Okay, then based on this the doctors will use therapeutic instruments or devices. So what are therapeutic instruments? Therapeutic instruments are devices which are used to treat the patients. Okay, so what type of treatment is given? For example, in the dialysis, okay, blood is forced inside our body. So how it is forced? through the use of some blood pump. So external force is required. Then if somebody is having sudden heart blockage, if there is an attack or if heart is not working, nowadays they are applying electric shock. So how much amount of voltage or current has to be given for it? So applying voltage or electric shock. Then if you take the areas like ultrasound, for example, some of the people are affected by some neural diseases. So for them, ultrasound scan is very, very important. If any patient is having problem in the abdomen, first the doctors will identify the root cause of it. Simply by placing their hands, nowadays nobody can identify the problem. So ultrasound scan imaging is required for it. So through ultrasound scan, we can monitor, and in some areas ultrasound is used for curing the patients also. Then electromagnetic radiations. People who are affected by some type of cancers will have some therapy. So for them, electromagnetic radiations will be passed. Based on the intensity of cancer, the amount of radiations will differ. So instruments used for therapeutic purposes. So therapeutic devices are the instruments which are used for treating patients' disease. Okay, so therapeutic device categories are based on the instruments which are used to treat disorders. Second one is the instruments which are used to control or assist the physiological functions of our body. The next category of the device is called as assistive devices. So it is mainly used for the persons who are having some form of disability. Example, the persons who does not have hands or legs or some hearing problems or eyesight. So we will have sophisticated equipments for them to assist them. So what is the use of such devices? So they are used to perform activities of daily day-to-day life, to avoid limitations in mobility. If they have any communication disorders, they can use such equipments to communicate with others, and sensory disabilities. So what are the classification of assistive devices? So orthopedic devices and prosthetic devices. So a biomedical engineer designs biomedical instruments like diagnostic, therapeutic, clinical, and research. So what are biomedical instruments? So biomedical instrumentation is the field of creating instruments that help us to measure, record, and transmit data to or from the. So what are the different types of biomedical instrumentation systems? So this classification is based on how we are using the biomedical instruments. So first classification is direct and indirect. So what is direct form of biomedical instruments? The instruments which are directly applied over the organs to measure the instruments are direct instruments. Indirect means indirectly we will use the instruments to read the signals. So example for direct instruments are the instruments which are used to take blood from our body. Okay, blood sample measurement, blood intensity measurement. Okay, indirect, the instruments which are used to count the platelets. Okay, so the instrument which is used to take blood, okay, is called as direct instrument. The instrument which is used for analysis of the blood will be called as indirect. Okay, then second category is invasive and non-invasive. So if you use some instruments, it may cause a damage to that particular organ. So such instruments are called as invasive instruments. Non-invasive means they don't cause any harm for that particular organ. For example, you know what is an X-ray. Okay, so high intensity electrons are passed, okay, over some area. So if you pass X-ray for a longer period, the cells will get destroyed. So it is an invasive technology. Okay, but at the same time, if you take ultrasound devices, okay, they are non-invasive. They don't do any harm. So instruments based on harmfulness of the device. Third category is contact and remote. So the devices which exactly contact with our human body. Okay, remote means through indirect way. Okay, so example for remote is ECG signals. So to measure the ECG, we don't touch our heart. Instead of that, we will place sensors over our chest, and from those sensors, we are going to measure the functioning of our heart. Okay, so they are called as remote instruments. Then sense and actuate. Okay, so sense means sensing the signals over the human body, and actuate means you have to activate it. Okay, some signals or devices will activate the organs. Okay, such kind of instruments. The last category is real time instruments and static. So real time is ECG. Okay, when sensors are placed in our chest, immediately it shows the PQRS waveform. From there, we can monitor what is the functionality of the heart. Similarly, signals from our eyes. Okay, so they are all real time. Okay, on the fly processing. So if you record them, okay, they will be recorded as images, that is static. For the future use, you can use it. So these are the classification of the instruments which are used in medical field. So different types of instruments are used in biomedical area: x-rays, ECG, EEG, MRI scans, ultrasound scan, CT scan. So these are bigger instruments used in hospitals. So think about a scenario: what will happen if we don't have all these instruments? Nowadays, the role of a doctor is minimized to a smaller circle. The doctor meets a patient only for 1 or 2 minutes. The rest of the thing is done by instruments in the hospitals. Instruments are not operated by the doctors. So we have technicians for them. So if you go to a hospital, the junior doctor writes something in a paper and they give it to you. So you will be going through each and every area in that hospital. So they will start from ECG. Okay. So no doctor is present in that each area. Only the technician does everything. Okay. EEG, ECG, X-ray, in all the areas, we have only technicians. So if you don't have all these instruments, what will happen? 90% of the diseases cannot be identified. Doctors are not gods. Okay, only after the invention of all these instruments, medical field have grown such that the death rate is reduced by 90%. Before 50 years, lot of people died in this world because people don't know what type of diseases were in their body. Even if diseases were there, doctors don't know how to treat them. So within 50 years, technology has developed such that people were able to identify all sort of diseases, and they were able to cure most of the diseases. So this was possible only with the help of instruments. Of course, doctors are essential because if you have instruments, you cannot cure a patient. So proper application of the instruments with required amount of medicine is essential. So doctors are very important in this